You know, I've told this story maybe 100 times. To the sheriff, to the reporters, to my grandkids when they're old enough to sit still for it. And every single time I get to the part about the horse, about what Copper did that morning, and people look at me the same way, like they're not sure if they should believe me or feel sorry for me. Like maybe I'm just an old man who spent too many years alone out in those hills and started imagining things. And maybe that's fair, But I'll tell you this, 2 boys came home because of what happened out there. 2 boys who had been gone for 2 years. 2 years. And the only reason they came home at all is because a horse, a big stubborn red roan named Copper, planted all 4 feet in the mud and refused to take another step. I was 74 years old that morning. I'd been on horseback my whole life, and I had never, not once, seen an animal do what Copper did. So you can believe me or you can't. But I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And then I'm going to tell you what it taught me, because that's the part that still keeps me up at night. Here's what I need you to understand before I get into it. I am not a man who believes in signs. I am not a man who talks to God on a regular basis or reads his horoscope or puts much stock in coincidence. I was raised practical. My father was practical. His father before him was practical. We were the kind of people who believe that what you see is what there is, and that feelings are for after the work is done. So when I tell you that something changed in me the morning I found those boys, something deep and permanent and not entirely explainable, I need you to understand that it's not coming from a man who was already leaning that way. It's coming from a man who had to be dragged there, kicking and fighting, by a 1,200-pound animal who apparently knew something I didn't. What I learned that morning is something I wish I had learned 60 years earlier. And I hope to God that what I'm about to say saves someone out there from taking as long as I did to figure it out. I was born in 1946 in a coal county where men didn't talk about much except work and weather. My daddy worked the mines until his lungs gave out at 58, and my mother took in laundry and kept her mouth shut about most things. We weren't poor in the way that makes you angry. We were poor in the quiet way, the way where you just learn real early that the world doesn't owe you a hearing, so you stop asking. I was 12 years old when I decided that I was going to be different. Not rich exactly, but heard, seen, like my presence on this earth was going to mean something that my daddy's hadn't. That sounds ugly to say out loud, but it's the truth, and at 78 years old, I'm done dressing up the truth. I started working ranches at 14. By the time I was 22, I had my own 30 acres in Harlan County. By 35, I had 200 acres, a decent herd, and a reputation in 3 counties as a man who knew horses. That was the thing I hung my whole sense of worth on, horses. My ability to read them, to work them, to earn their trust faster than anybody else around. I thought it was a skill. I thought it was something I had built. I didn't understand until I was a very old man that what I was really doing all those years was trying to feel like the world could hear me through them. Because I sure as hell couldn't make it hear me any other way. And for a long time, that worked fine. The horses responded to me. People respected me for it. My wife, Loretta, used to say I was more comfortable in the barn than in the house, and she wasn't wrong. And I didn't hear the sadness in it when she said it, not for a long time. Then my 50s came around, and something started going quiet in me that I didn't know how to name. I had the land, I had the reputation, I had the life I had pointed myself toward at 12 years old, and I kept waiting to feel something arrive, some sense of completion, Some morning where I woke up and thought, this is it. This is what it was all for. That morning never came. I'd be out riding the east fence line in the early dark, just me and whatever horse I was working that season, and there'd be this silence inside me that had nothing to do with the quiet of the land. It was an inside quiet, the kind that doesn't rest you. And I didn't tell Loretta. I didn't tell anybody. I just kept working the way my father had, and his father before him, because that's what practical men do. But here's what I know now that I didn't know then. I wasn't chasing land. I wasn't chasing a reputation. What I was chasing, what I had been chasing, since I was 12 years old, watching my daddy come home from the mine, too tired to look up from his boots, was the feeling that I mattered, that I was worth something just by being in the room. And I thought, God, I thought, that if I had enough acres, enough horses, enough of a name that people used when I wasn't around, then that feeling would finally come and park itself somewhere inside me and stay. It doesn't work that way. I can tell you now with absolute certainty that it does not work that way, because the thing you're really looking for has never been outside you. It was never in the land or the livestock or the way men nodded at you in the feed store. It was in you the whole time, buried under all the hard years, but there, waiting. And it doesn't take a bigger ranch to find it. It takes a different kind of stillness than the one you've been running from. The second place I made this same mistake, just wearing different clothes, was with my son Robert. He's 51 now. We're closer than we used to be, and I want to be careful how I say this, because he's a good man and he knows I love him. But for most of his growing up years, I showed him I loved him by teaching him things, by putting him on horseback before he could properly reach the stirrups, by bringing him along the fence line and explaining things and correcting things and building things next to him. I thought that was love. I thought love was transmission, passing down what you know, making the boy competent, making him ready. And Robert learned everything I taught him. He's a fine horseman to this day. But there was a night, he was maybe 15. We had a bad season, and I was stressed, and I snapped at him over something stupid. The way he'd wrapped a lead rope, I think, and he went quiet in a way I recognized immediately, because it was the same way I went quiet, and I didn't go after it. I told myself he was being sensitive. I told myself I'd make it right later. I told myself the work was the apology. And the truth is, what Robert needed wasn't more of my knowledge. He needed to know that he was loved separate from his usefulness, separate from whether he wrapped the rope right. He needed to know I would have been proud of him, even if he'd never touched a horse in his life. It took me until he was in his 30s to say that out loud. We lost a lot of years in between, not because either of us was a bad person, because I kept trying to love him with my hands instead of my words, because that's all I knew. I have two old friends I still talk to, Walter Briggs and a man we all call Dub, who I've known since we were boys running the same creek beds. Walter is 80 now, and he is the angriest man I have ever known in my life. Still angry. Still comparing his herd to his neighbor's. Still keeping a mental ledger of every slight that was ever dealt him. Still convinced that if one or two things had broken differently, he'd be somewhere else, somewhere better. You sit with Walter for 20 minutes, and you can feel the exhaustion of it, the cost. His wife left him in 1987. His kids are polite at Christmas and distant the rest of the year. And Walter will tell you, if you ask, that none of that is his fault. Because as long as it's not his fault, he doesn't have to look at the thing inside him that he's been running from since before I knew him. Dub, though. Dub is different. Dub lost his ranch in the late 90s, drought and debt, the usual story, and moved into a small house in town and took a job at the hardware store. And I remember thinking at the time that it would break him. It didn't. Something in Dub got quieter in a good way, easier. He smiles at people like he means it. He'll sit on his porch for an hour, watching nothing in particular, and look genuinely content doing it. I asked him once how he got there, and he said, "Earl, I stopped waiting to feel like enough. I just decided I already was." Just like that, just decided. I've thought about that sentence more than I've thought about almost anything else in the last 10 years. The reason the horse stopped, the reason Copper planted himself in that mud and wouldn't go one step further no matter what I did. I still can't explain it in any scientific way. I've tried. There are people who'll tell you horses can hear things we can't, can smell things from impossible distances, can pick up on distress in a way that bypasses all the usual senses. Maybe that's it. Maybe one of those boys made a sound that morning that I couldn't hear, but Copper could. Maybe it was a scent. Maybe it was nothing I'll ever be able to name. But here's what I've come to believe. After sitting with it for 4 years, the horse stopped because he wasn't in his own way. He wasn't running a story about who he was or what he was supposed to be doing that morning. He was just present, just completely, utterly present in that cold gray November morning. And because he was fully there, he could receive something that I, with all my 60 years of horsemanship and all my certainty about how the world worked, would have ridden right past. And that is the whole thing. That is the entire lesson. We ride past it. Every day we ride past it. The life we actually want, the peace we're actually looking for, the people right in front of us who need us to stop. We ride right past all of it because we're so busy being the version of ourselves we built to survive that we can't slow down long enough to be found. Those two boys, I won't say their names because their family deserves their privacy. They were 7 and 9 years old when they went missing. They were found 400 yards off a trail I had ridden a dozen times. 400 yards, alive, cold, scared out of their minds, but alive. And I walked them out of those woods and I handed them to their mother, and she made a sound I will carry with me until I die. And driving home that afternoon, I pulled over on Route 38 and I sat in my truck for a long time. And I thought about my father, who never once told me he was proud of me and probably just didn't know how. I thought about Robert and all the lead ropes. I thought about Loretta, who had loved me patiently for 46 years while I was mostly somewhere else in my head. And I thought, you have been missing too, not in the woods, but missing. And the thing that finds you is not more land or more horses or more proving. The thing that finds you is stillness, is stopping, is doing what Copper did, planting your feet and refusing to go one more step in the wrong direction. If this story landed somewhere in your chest, I want you to do something for me. Share it right now. Think of one person, a son, a father, a friend, someone who's still out there riding hard toward something that isn't going to give them what they think it will, and send it to them. Not with a message, just send it. They'll know why. And leave me a comment. Tell me, what is the thing you've been chasing that was never really the thing? What's the real thing underneath it? Because I think a lot of us know the answer and just haven't said it out loud yet. Say it here. It's safe here. And if you're new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. I'm just an old rancher with some years on him and some things I should have said a lot sooner. But I'm saying them now. Better late than never. That's what copper taught me. It's never too late to stop.